presentations before, so thank you all for coming out, but of course it was all pre-COVID, so we're happy to be back. We're a practice that you may or may not know about us. Historically, we've been out of Aventura in South Miami and Weston, but as of October 23rd, we have an office opening in Miami Beach on 41st Street, so we're super excited about that. We've had a need for many of our families asking, and so we finally decided to take the leap and open up here. So that being said, I'm really excited to introduce two excellent clinical psychologists who are here to present to you today, Dr. Naomi Tarlow and Dr. Erica Serrato. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Dr. Carla. Thank you again for coming. So we're here to just quickly discuss behavior management strategies that hopefully will be helpful. These strategies work for all children, and I think they can be helpful in your home, hopefully. They especially work if you're having any difficulties with homework time, or if you want some strategies for getting compliance at nighttime, for the bedtime routine, or maybe the morning is rough. There are different ways we can approach that in evidence-based, with evidence-based strategies. So these strategies have all been researched really thoroughly over the past several decades, and so hopefully these will be helpful to you all. So, some features of these evidence-based behavior management strategies, again, beneficial for all children and really all people. So if you want your spouse to improve their doing of the dishes or something like that, these work too. They emphasize really positive feedback and incentives rather than punishment. The research is very clear that positive reinforcement, that incentives really work to shape behavior, whereas punishment tends to lead to more like sneaky behaviors or trying to get away with things that children may do anyway, right? So we really want to bring out the positive behaviors, the desired behaviors, which is why we frame it in this way. The ratio you want to think in your head is to aim for every 3 positives for every 1 negative. That would look like praising your child for putting their backpack in the right place, telling them, I'm so happy to see you this afternoon, looks like you had a great day at school, and maybe telling them something specifically that you liked that they did when they got home. For every single criticism or maybe redirection or command that you give them, you really want to offset those with the positives. And all these strategies can be adapted for use with children of all ages. So, the really key point that I think is sort of a flip of a script for a lot of parents is you actually want to catch your child being good. You want to look for opportunities to praise them. You want to catch them in doing behaviors that are desired. So a lot of parents think, okay, my child's playing quietly, they're playing independently, let me leave them alone for that, right? They're being good, they're being quiet, I don't need to touch that, I'm just going to leave it alone. But in fact, you should look for those opportunities to catch them doing that and tell them what you like about it. It just enhances those behaviors very effectively. So most of the things that adults say to children are questions or commands. We tend to ask them what they're doing, how their day was. We also tend to direct their behavior. So to shift away from that, you want to really aim for this positive feedback. It increases compliance. It improves the relationship. So if you're going through kind of a rough time, or they're getting upset a lot, or it's kind of this moody feeling, it improves that relationship. If you're looking for opportunities to use positive reinforcement, you actually get better at noticing what they're doing well because you're actively looking for it. So when can I praise this behavior? What do I see that they're doing well? Maybe they're having a terrible day and they've had a tantrum multiple times, but there's still some things they're doing well. It trains your brain really to look for those opportunities. It encourages positive behavior among other children. So if you have other kiddos in the house or even their friends, there's a social learning effect that may be happening. And it can be used to shape behaviors over time. So some types of positive feedback to really train yourself to look for. Telling your child exactly what they're doing well. Giving them positive attention, even when, like I said, they're playing independently. Going over to intentionally give them attention is a really good strategy. Smiling, of course, improving mood, high fives. Other ideas, things that you guys have tried for positive attention for your kiddos? Fun activities or opportunities to engage with them? Yeah.
Well, like global praise, like I love you, the global
Yes.
versus the specific. So, those are also great.
Totally, like this unconditional positive regard you have for your kid. You love them no matter what. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. And again, remember that 3-to-1 ratio to try to really, really like heavy on the praise, fewer questions, commands, redirections. Okay, so really quickly, a couple of photos here. So in the upper left, homework time. In this scenario, he's not doing his homework, he's covering his face. What could you still praise in that situation? Yes.
I like the way you have your homework out and ready to go.
Yes, awesome. Sorry, someone else over here.
Did he sitting?
Yes, you're sitting. You're at least sitting. Thank you for sitting at the table. He's not running around the house. Yes, he has his homework stuff out. The materials are right in front of him. Maybe he picks up his pencil in a minute and you praise that. Right? There's ways to really shape this behavior in a positive way. Kiddo on the upper right, he is probably not doing any actual cleaning, but what could you praise there? Sorry? Yes, helping, just the attempt to help, holding the broom, grabbing something that's like an adult, tool to try to help, absolutely. You guys kind of get the idea, but down here, she's making a mess, maybe trying to help clean up, but there's still ways you can praise that. Maybe this kiddo is not happy about having to take out the trash, but he's doing it anyway. So maybe he's saying some snarky things under his breath. Ignore it and just praise the fact that he's actually taking out the trash, right? So there's all these ways to help shape behavior. Okay, more examples. Your child's having a tantrum. When they calm down, even for a minute or 30 seconds, I know you're upset. You're doing a great job cooling down right now. Maybe they escalate again in a second. Let it go. Wait for the next time they cool down. Give them some more praise. Next one, your child's avoiding homework, but we kind of talked about this. Sitting at the table, picks up their pencil. Thank you for getting ready to start your homework. Your child is playing quietly on their own. Again, something I mentioned. Great work, playing so nicely over here. Walking over there intentionally to give them attention can be effective. Moral of the story is to pay attention to desired behaviors. When you do, those desired behaviors will increase. Hopefully you'll see a change fairly quickly, especially if you're trying to flip the script, if you're kind of in a rough patch. I worked with a group of parents at one point, and this one parent of a 3-year-old was like, oh my gosh, the behavior is really terrible, the tantrums are happening consistently. She came to a class where we reviewed these strategies. She used positive reinforcement for a week, looking for good things he was doing, and she came back, she's like, my child is cured. I don't know what happened, but he's a totally different child. And so it really does work when you really put intentional focus into this practice. Okay, this is kind of our pyramid of effective parenting strategies. All of these are effective, right? But the reason it's a pyramid is because these at the bottom we want to use more liberally, and at the top more sparingly. So use a lot of that empathy, the I love you, the attention, the listening, praise, all of that very, very liberally. Even if you think it's something your child should be doing regardless, you're giving them opportunities to feel good about the tasks that they're already doing. And then as we go up the pyramid, yes, you should have clear limits and house rules. Yes, you should ignore minor misbehavior or redirect their behavior. Yes, you should use logical consequences, but those should hopefully be more rare than the attention and praise. Okay, so when praise and positive attention isn't enough, so when your child's tantrums are not cured by just paying attention to the good, we do recommend sometimes taking a step up to something like a point system, which I'm sure some of you have tried in various ways. People use these types of strategies with potty training. I mean, these kinds of strategies work, and so hopefully it'll be a strategy you can keep in the back of your pocket. The goals with the point system are to establish a short list of behaviors that you want to see. So I want you to complete your morning routine, maybe independently you add that, keep your hands and feet to yourself, finish homework before dinner. And those are the key goals you have. So think to yourself what your priorities are, and set a few targets. And then you make that your tracking system or your chart. So I like sometimes using it like a jar of marbles, where it's really easy. You drop in a marble if you see a behavior that you like. You drop in a marble if they completed the task you asked them to do, etc. You can do that with popsicle sticks or whatever else. You can make something simple where it's a red light, green light. So they completed their morning routine, they're still on green for the day. They get home and they hit their brother, maybe they move to red, but then have an opportunity to move back to green if they finish their homework before dinner, that kind of thing. Or just a checklist of key behaviors that you're checking off each day, then maybe they get points for that. Rewards need to be part of this. So daily rewards work best, especially for younger kiddos. Maybe if they get a little bit older towards 4th, 5th grade and into middle school, weekly types of rewards can work. But especially for younger kids, that more immediate reinforcement is important. And so they should be getting rewards. They're working towards something, right? We work for paychecks. That's our positive reinforcement for doing our jobs. They're working towards something. They're trying to improve behaviors. That's hard work for all of us. So rewards are very important, so they can earn that. And provide feedback on progress. So you're still on green for today. You've been keeping your hands and feet to yourself. Nice work. Give them some updates about how they're doing. And then administer the rewards that you've decided. One thing that makes this especially effective is including your kiddo in the creative parts of this plan. So picking the marbles they want to use, decorating the popsicle sticks or the poster that's the behavior chart, and very importantly, ask them for ideas for rewards. So if you want to start a system like this, maybe sit down with your kiddo or kiddos and ask them for their ideas. What do you want to earn? I know that this is really hard work changing behavior. I know that you're really working hard to get that morning routine done independently. That's a lot of work. Let's talk about what you want to earn for that effort, and maybe get some ideas from them, get some buy-in in this system. Questions or comments, or maybe anyone who's tried this type of system, have any comments?
We use coins.
Okay.
You can buy them on Amazon, they're colorful and they're very nice.
That's awesome. And they have like different values or awesome. Yeah. So coins on Amazon, different colors, different values, and different behaviors are equal different value points. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that it's nice to have a menu of options so that they're striving for different things. If there's something that's kind of expensive, or maybe the trip you know you're going to take them on, make it worth like 1,000 points or something.
Yes.
Build to it.
Yes, definitely.
And that way, if you feel like they need like a something or something for a few points, you can be like, oh, you can cash in today for this.
Yes. Yeah, that's the great part about using some kind of coin-based or point-based system, is they can cash in their points, absolutely, and at various times. And maybe you have a little saver on your hands, and your saver wants to save them up for something big, or maybe you have a kiddo that's like, no, I would like something today, because I feel good about today, and I want to earn a reward. And that's okay, too. Okay, other questions or comments? Yeah.
So I'm very for the positive reinforcement. I think it works tremendously. I am curious though, do kids now start to rely or depend on that instead of just integrity and good behavior on their own?
Yeah, it's a great question. So in my experience, no, you can kind of phase out these reward systems over time. And as kids get older and they start to feel good about their success, they may not need that positive reinforcement system anymore. I still recommend like praise and telling them what you like about what they're doing. Like I said, even for our spouses, that works well. So continue using the praise and building them up. But as for an actual system, they may get to a point where they're on a roll and they've developed confidence that they can do these things, that they feel good about it, then they see the value of doing it because it makes their day run more smoothly. So there are some positive reinforcers that are sort of natural that occur once they've established healthy behaviors or desired behaviors. So I definitely think you can phase this out. But really, for all of us, like I said, if we're gonna have to do something really hard or push ourselves to do something that we otherwise may not do without positive reinforcement, like going to work, right? How many of us would work for free? Probably just for the internal benefit, probably very few people. So if you're trying to get through some kind of skill that is really difficult, that they have to push them through, some kind of positive reinforcement plan can still work pretty well. Does that answer your question
Yeah.
somewhat satisfactorily?
Yeah, it does. The positive reinforcement and the words of affirmation, all that definitely works and it encourages. What I find is that any like physical rewards, they start negotiating now every time they do it.
Ah.
And they're very good negotiators.
Yes, that's a good point. There are definitely, I could see the negotiation strategies that would start to come in. Or I've seen kids like run up to their parents and like, did you see I just did that? Can you give me the points for that? You know? So there's definitely some of that can occur. I don't know, do you have any thoughts?
I kind of think of it like training wheels on a bike. Like, you know, at the beginning, you're giving like a full dose of rewards for something because it's like really hard for a kid to do. And then you phase it out to be more intermittent. So when that negotiating happens, you know, they're not expecting it every single time. And then eventually, as Dr. Serrato was explaining, you know, when they notice the natural rewards in the environment, their teacher's happy, they handed in their homework, their parents are smiling, they, you know, don't hurt themselves. They're going to be more motivated to do it on their own.
Yeah.
I think also sometimes added doesn't necessarily have to be a physical reward, it can be like an experience, like
True.
when you earn X amount of points, like you go ice cream together, or
Yep.
something like we'll have a special, you know, daddy-daughter date night or something.
Yeah.
That doesn't have to necessarily be something like we're getting, but
That's true.
And sometimes a privilege, you get to choose dessert, you get to choose the music in the car when you're
Yep.
driving, like things like that.
Have a sleepover, or even like screen time, I find is a really big one. Like, in my opinion, parents should not be giving away screen time for free. I think that kids should have to earn that. And so, you know, that's another thing. They're gonna continue to want screen time throughout their development, you know, or like, yeah, sleepovers or outings or whatever. So there are ways to kind of shift the positive reinforcers. But the fact is we all need positive reinforcement throughout our lifespan. So that just changes. It changes the way it looks, but it's still, I think, present in our lives. So, but really good question. I would ignore the negotiating if you get a chance to. It's like you don't even hear it.
And, oh, sorry. No, go ahead. And you can also notice the positive within that. I see you're really excited about getting another Matchbox car, you know, and use that as a motivator for another positive behavior. You can sort of notice the positive in that, ignore the negotiating aspect of it.
I think ultimately, again, each child's personality is different, and some do get more fixated on the rewards or the tangible rewards, but ultimately the greatest asset is your shift of attention to your child. And that's why when they're misbehaving and they're getting your attention, they'll take it any way they can. And so as you start to remove your attention from the negatives or shift to the positives, they're going to internalize those experiences as success, right? And also, as a parent, if you by any chance, without realizing it, mentioning like if you do that, if you don't do that, you're not going to get the reward, they're going to be more focused on the tangible too. So it is a, you know, it's a hard thing because sometimes we can fade out, but then you do have some kids that are doing the system and they're doing well and they're still very focused on the reward. So you have to do that, you know, you have to fade it gingerly. But ultimately, your attention and feeling internally successful is the greatest asset and the greatest reward. And that's why when you saw that pyramid, this is the down, you know, the lower part of the pyramid is really where you want to do it liberally, so they internalize, like, I'm successful, I can do things on my own, my family's pleased with me, it makes me feel good. And that's what we want. We want the motivation to be internalized.
Okay. Really good questions, thank you. Another option, if you're trying to target school behavior, and you're like, listen, we kind of got it handled at home, but my kiddo's not turning in work at school, or maybe not wanting to do classwork, or, you know, blurting out. This is called a homeschool daily report card. And so the idea here is that there are, again, just a few target behaviors. So in this example, it says, I know it's probably too small, but follows class rules with no more than 3 rule violations, completes assignments within the designated time, completes assignments at 80% accuracy, and complies with teacher requests. So there are specific goals for this child. And the classes are listed, his special, language arts, math, reading, etc. And if you can get your child's teacher on board, you can have them quickly jot down yes or no after that subject area. Did they meet these goals? Calculate the yeses, calculate the percentage of yeses if you want to use a percent, or just use the yeses as points towards their reward system. And this can help encourage improved school behavior. When you're not there and you're not using these strategies, hopefully the teacher is to some degree, but it's just a more detailed approach to improving school behavior. And then this report goes home every day with the kiddo, and so they can get their points for their achievement of the goals during the day. It's also a good way to communicate with the teacher. There's a space for notes. So it's an option if you're trying to focus on, like I said, improving school behavior, and then being able to reward that behavior at home. Questions on that, the daily report card? Okay, we're gonna shift over to Dr. Tarlow and keep it moving.
All right, so as Dr. Serrato mentioned, hopefully at this point you've been practicing all this positive reinforcement, the empathy, the rewards, the praise, and this has really been shown to significantly reduce occurrences of misbehavior. But there's still going to be times that we want to be using some other strategies, so I'm going to talk about some of those right now. A really key component to any of the behavioral system is the ability to ignore minor misbehavior, because as we were just mentioning, attention is super powerful. So negative attention as well is super powerful. It's very reinforcing. It leads to a whole long cyclical back and forth. When we criticize a child, when we tell them not to do something, to stop doing something, it can lead to a whole back and forth. I'm sure I'm a parent myself. I've experienced this too. It can be difficult. So the great opposite strategy for that is to ignore minor misbehavior. This is particularly helpful for minor irritating behaviors, whining in the car on the way home from school, things like that. And as we mentioned, it reduces the negativity of parent-child interactions by sort of taking away the life of the interaction with that ignoring. One thing to note is that we'll probably find an extinction burst. This means that you'll see an increase in these behaviors in the short term before they gradually decrease, because kids are used to getting attention for, certain behaviors like, throwing, you think of like a little kid throwing food off of their high chair. They're used to getting lots of attention for that. So they're gonna ramp up their efforts to get that attention before they gradually realize, I'm not getting attention for this, and they'll probably begin to stop that misbehavior. And importantly, we want to pair that ignoring with praise for good behavior. So when we're ignoring a kid for whining about getting started doing homework, when they're just, sitting silently, they're not whining anymore, praising them for sitting quietly at their chair, praising them for looking at their homework, really looking for that praise once that negative misbehavior is stopped. A really important way to ensure compliance is giving a good command. What makes an effective command? A command that is short and a command that is specific. You want to make sure that your kid truly understands what you're asking them to do and make it as easy as possible for them to comply. Kind of like the opposite of this cartoon. Mom told me to act my age. Kid probably can, there's a lot of room for interpretation there. So we want to be short and specific. We want to make sure we have their attention. They're looking at us, they're not distracted by something else. And an important aspect of commands is that, this doesn't have to be yelling, this doesn't have to be like a negative process. We're just, giving a really specific, direct command, stated positively. We can use a polite tone such as please, like please stay seated, rather than get off the table. We want to be using positive language rather than focusing on the negative. Another key component component of an effective command is that it should be direct. A direct command says something like, please put your Legos in the box. Versus, let's clean up Lego, or why don't you clean up your Lego? Because that can lead to, as we were mentioning before, that back and forth. They could say, oh, I don't want to clean my Lego, and you just phrased it as a question. And what does let's mean? Do we do it together? Do I do it on my own? When do I do it? So we want to be specific and direct. Another helpful part to making a command effective is breaking it into smaller chunks. Homework's a good example of that. You've got lots of subjects, different assignments take different amounts of time, so sort of being really specific and targeted with your commands, like please open your map. And when we get compliance, we want to follow up with an appropriate consequence, a praise or a point and a point system, if that makes sense. And then for non-compliance, there will be other consequences, which we'll get to. So the important thing to note is that you should only use a command when you're ready to follow up with a consequence. You have to be prepared to, sort of make your word mean something. Otherwise, you're going to reduce the effectiveness of your commands. One popular sort of known consequence is timeouts. I know timeout gets like a varied rep. There's lots of different things you see out there about timeouts. We're talking about a very specific sort of timeout. That really, the key component of it is that it is timeout from attention. Timeout does not need to be overly negative or punitive. It's, a time where you were, having your kid sit on a chair. There's very little speaking to the kid. So they have time to self-regulate, and there's, very reduced attention to the process. There's different periods of time you can make your timeout for. Often they, start at around 3 minutes. And as we mentioned with ignoring, you can probably expect an extension first. So I'm wondering if anyone has any questions or thoughts about timeout, because I think sometimes parents have concerns or things that haven't worked for them before. Yeah.
What's an appropriate amount of time for them to do that?
It often depends on the age of the kid. There's a 3-minute timeout can really be effective for all ages, but sometimes you can add a couple of minutes based on the kid's age. So let's say you've got a 7-year-old kid, you can make it about 7 minutes. But you can try a short, brief timeout, 3 to 5 minutes, and that tends to be effective. The important thing about timeout, and timeout's a very specific thing that we can have a whole talk about, so we do have some handouts for you guys back there, thank you very much, that have more specific strategies, is that the child only gets out of timeout when they've stopped the negative behavior. So that also sort of affects the time, but they can be relatively brief. Anything to that?
Yeah, I would just add that if you have a set time, like you do 5-minute timeouts, if they're calm and quiet at 4 minutes, you can certainly make that timeout shorter because that will help incentivize them getting calmer more quickly. And then in contrast, if they're still screaming at 5 minutes, wait until they're calm, and then the second they're calm, you go in and tell them, thank you for calming down, your timeout's over, and then return to whatever they were doing beforehand. So those are just some strategies to keep in mind. You really don't want to reinforce the screaming and tantruming, even if they've served the full timeout.
I'd also recommend that, especially with really small children who don't really have a sense of time, because then you can get them a visual sense of time, like the sand timers and they can watch. And that helps them try to figure out how much time do I have to self-regulate. If I can get it before the sand is all over, my time will be up earlier.
That's a great point.
So it's nice, especially for the littles who don't have watches or
Definitely.
And just remember what Dr. Trello said, it's timeout from attention. So while we want to make sure that they're safe and they're not hurting themselves or hurting, or destroying anything around them, we have to be mindful of our own attention to the child. Even if we're in the same room, trying not to be actively looking at them, because just that looking at them and they know can reinforce, meaning increase the behavior or sustain the negative behavior. So while you may need to be in the room or around, try to act busy or not provide